Hello and welcome, readers and listeners and viewers from across America and around the world. I'm your host tonight, Zen Garcia. Usually come on Wednesday evenings, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Momentary Zen. And I do have an announcement this evening that starting next week, Robbie Davidson of Celebrate Truth, of the YouTube channel Celebrate Truth, will be taking over this time slot, and he has quite a lot of followers and a lot of listeners, and so I'm sure that the chat will be very active with those that are interested in supporting his work. And and Robbie and Pastor Nate Wolfe will be joining me this evening for kind of a final roundtable discussion, just to introduce you to Robbie and his work, and also just to speak about some of the end times and the esoteric subjects that all of us have awakened to, and which a lot of you, as listeners and viewers and seekers, are wanting to learn and to find guidance and direction and discernment upon. And so this evening we'll spend a little bit of time familiarizing yourself with the work of Robbie, and just kind of covering some of the weird and strange things that we've come to know over the past couple of years. But Robbie, are you there, brother?
I'm here, Zen. Thanks so much for the introduction.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, brother, and thank you for your willingness to join me and also to join the network. I know everybody's excited to have you on board, and I don't know if you heard, but there are 92 hosts now on both Studios A and Studio B, on both, most 24/7 all during the week, covering all the different time slots, and so it's a quite a large family, and welcome to the group. We appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm really excited about moving forward in 2019 with the time slot, the 2 hours, and I've got some incredible plans ready and some great announcements coming up.
Excellent, excellent. And we also have this evening with us Pastor Nate Wolfe. Pastor Wolfe, are you there, brother?
Yes, I'm here, Zen. Thanks for having me on again.
Excellent, no problem. Hey, we appreciate you as well. And with the work that both Robbie and I do, and the discernment that we've been led to on certain spiritual issues, and all of us being brothers in the faith, I thought this would be, great for you to write shotgun with us as well, and also for people to come to know you and the work that you're doing as well, because you are really beginning in creating a presence for yourself in the work that you're doing with regard to the cosmology and the other things. I know you said that you were involved in some radio ministry previously, but that you're really trying to, find your voice, and to also find a platform for you to be able to share your testimony and the work that the Most High has led you to. So, if you would kind of introduce yourself a little bit and give out your website, your contact information, and then I'll get Robbie for you to do the same.
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, my new email address that I just am announcing today is it's a little bit more specific to my YouTube presence, Fired for Truth. It is Nate@firedfortruth.org. Nate@firedfortruth.org. And if there are those who would like to support me in my ministry, you can do that through Patreon, www.patreon.com/Nate Wolfe.
Excellent. And Robbie, I know that you've spoken with Willow and Roe. Have you decided on the name of the show that, going forward from next Saturday, and what you
Yeah, I mean,
decided
I'm
to
going to be
call it?
calling it Celebrate Truth with
I
Robbie
figured that.
Davidson, and I will be announcing my co-host that I've chosen here very, very soon. So that's going to be an exciting announcement for me to be able to announce. But yeah, I'm just in the middle of working things through with them, and really excited about getting things kicked off for next week.
Excellent. All right, brother. And give out your website and contact and YouTube information, and kind of let people know about, kind of who you are, the the different work you've done with the DVDs and the films and the
Sure. Yeah.
videos,
My
all that?
YouTube channel is Celebrate Truth, and I'm the documentary filmmaker of The Global Lie, Scientism Exposed, and Scientism Exposed 2. And then most recently just came out with my first book called Scientism Exposed, Hiding the True Creator of Creation. So you can pretty much catch all my work on YouTube at youtube.com/celebrate truth, or you can go to celebratetruth.org.
And for those that are not aware of Robbie's work, he does a really incredible job with the videography and the filmmaking. And can you talk a little bit about your background with the work that you do? Because I'm sure that you were involved in some manner with this kind of production previous to your involvement in bringing forth truth this way on your YouTube channel.
Well, it's always been kind of like a hobby horse for me. I really enjoyed behind the scenes and filmmaking, and it was just kind of learn as you go. But I've been interested in film work for probably the better half of 20 years, and it wasn't until 2015 that I decided to get onto YouTube and start putting my name to getting out this really important truth when it came to standing firm on God's word when it came to creation and just seeing the immense amount of lies that have gone on in the name of science, and just peeling back the different layers of like the onion, so to speak, and finding out that most of what we're believing today is scientism. And that's what I've kind of focused a lot of my attention on, is really getting into revealing the flat earth truth, but really focusing on a lot of what scientism offered the world, kind of its origins, and showing that it was nothing more than an agenda, a deception, and it was important to be exposed.
Really, it's a religion. It's a faith
Mm-hmm.
and an ideology, huh?
It really is, yeah. And it's when you start looking into it deeper, you really start to see exactly that it's nothing more than a blatant attack on the Word of God, on everything of the standard, the created order, the creation itself. Every single aspect of God's creation is under attack. And I think that this is such an important topic because most people, I would say all people, their worldview is shaped by scientism from such an early age. So it doesn't matter really what belief system you have. At an early age, you're already indoctrinated into a scientism worldview, and that starts to, get you starting to think, well, can I really trust this book from, a few thousand years ago? What it says, when all of a sudden scientism is pretty much saying that everything that's written in there is wrong. But we're dealing with a massive deception on a grand scale, and I'm just so thankful that God's called me to the task of really being able to, expose these lies. And I'm very passionate about it and really excited. I'm going on 4 years now dealing in this subject matter. I've done about 8 documentaries. I have about 500 videos on my channel. So definitely continuing on, making sure that this topic is exposed, but also a lot of people come to the saving knowledge of the truth, and it's found in no one but Jesus.
Amen. Let's talk a little bit about the videos, the documentaries that you made mention of. Can you talk a little bit about first the global lie, and then let's go into the scientism 1 and 2 and the kind of the main premise of each?
Sure. Well, the global lie was done in 2015, and that really just focused on really this global deception coming down to the globe itself. And it featured highly Rob Skiba in there. It was more of a compilation kind of documentary that I put together. And that one, really, really did well. I think it's about 500,000 views on it to date on YouTube. And it was fantastic. I'm actually looking at redoing it for 2019 to release it on DVD and just have it updated because it was kind of like my first work, but really it wasn't until Scientism Exposed where I decided to do something that would be released on DVD, and that I would put a lot of time and effort into really portraying this information, but also put it together so that it could be a resource and a tool. Scientism Exposed is almost 2 hours long, and it doesn't mention flat Earth even once. So it's a great resource to get into someone's hands about this topic, because it really subtly starts bringing in, a lot of these questions that we have, and showing all these different areas of scientism that a lot of people are holding up to be the truth, and they're finding out that there's a lot of lies and deception behind it. So Scientism Exposed was really my first major work. It's on the IMDb, and I believe it's still about 9 out of 10, which is surprising, over 300 reviews. And it's done incredibly well just with the subject matter, and many people are waking up to this truth. And then coming up with the sequel, which you were involved with, Zen, as far as Rob Skiba and other people were involved in that, which was really, really awesome to be able to meet with you, personally, to be at your house and to do that. So 2 is more about following me on my journey, meeting these people, because up until that point, I had never really met anyone in person. You meet a lot of people on Skype and through the internet, but this was a really nice way to be able to sit down and meet with many people that I had been following their work for a lot of, quite a few years, including Rob Skiba and many others. So, and again, all of these people were really coming to the same information at the same time. And I find in 2014, 2015, something really supernatural took place where many people were waking up to the lies of the global lie when it came to what we've been taught we're living on. And that's what's so profound about this discussion as well. Many people have seen the lies of evolution and knew that there was a conspiracy and there was cover-ups and lies going on there. No one really thought to look at other areas of science. And it's really surprising to me, myself included. I look at this as something supernatural and being woken up to start to look into cosmology and look into other areas. And when you do, you realize that this lie is a lot bigger than you ever thought of just evolution or biological sciences. This really spans the entire spectrum of all sciences, because Satan has really infiltrated and masqueraded inside a mechanism called truth. This is the way we determine truth, through the scientific method. But much of what we are being taught today has nothing to do with the scientific method. It's moved into theoretical science, into theories, and even worse yet, deceptions and agendas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly seems like, the premise of that Darwinism and the Copernican model, and then also the new facet of it, that the ancient aliens are creators, are all based upon scientism as a whole, as a belief and a religion that is being perpetuated. And like the astrophysicists are the new neoteric priests of Baal, it seems like. And so this is a war of ideologies. And Nate, would you care to comment here with regard to the deception and what you see coming with regard to, the whole everybody being forced to make a stand on where they are with either standing upon NASA and what they teach, or the Word of God and what is revealed within the Scriptures?
Sure. And I just want to throw in real quick about the Global Lie documentary, because I think I shared last week how I kind of came into the whole flat earth, biblical creation awareness. It was actually that documentary was the first one that I saw. I was researching on the flood, trying to watch some videos on the flood, and all of a sudden the Global Lie thumbnail popped up in YouTube as a recommended video, and I'm like, what is this? Checked it out, and I was just really impressed with all of the scripture that was used in that documentary. I mean, that really was an eye-opening experience for me, and that was the gateway video to other videos that actually had the phrase flat earth in the title. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The Global Lie was important for me personally, because that was the very first video. And I think, God knows what he's doing, obviously, as he works through his providence and calls those who are seeking truth, to those truths. He understood how I'm wired, as a minister of the gospel and a teacher of God's word for almost 26 years. And he knew that I had been praying about truth, and he knew that I had been really awakened to a lot of deception from Satan. And so that was the perfect video for me to watch and kind of light that fire. So that being said, with the whole idea of deception, this last year, as I said before I got fired, I was really recognizing deception in the Word of God as it shows, don't be deceived, do not be deceived. Revelation 12, verse 9, about Satan, the dragon, which deceives the whole world. And I always knew, of course, that Satan was the enemy of God and the adversary against the people of God. But it wasn't until about a year and a half ago when I started really praying about truth that I recognized how much deception was in the world. And of course, a lot of people believe that perhaps one of the great, if not the greatest coming deception could have to do with so-called aliens. I definitely believe that that's a distinct possibility. Of course, there's a lot of prophecy in Scripture as well that points to end times, and I do believe that we are living, at least in the beginning of the end times, and things seem to be kind of quickening, and this world that we live in seems to have changed quite a bit just in the last 2 to 3 years. And as you know, things are kind of moving forward so swiftly. It's scary to see, some of the things that are in the news, developments around the world, some of which may coincide with biblical prophecy. And so, yeah, the times that we're living in are definitely a time where we're going to have to make a choice between truth and falsehood, and whether or not we stand on the Word of God first and foremost, or the Word of man, which includes scientism, as you and Robbie have pointed out.
Yeah, and me personally, having looked into, because I was very familiar with a lot of the Sumerian mythologies and all of the New Age stuff before being brought full circle, and then reading the Bible and the extra biblical content, I saw that with the scriptures, they are 100% prophetic. And so that was what convinced me as to the Bible being the inspired word of the Most High God. And the prophecies contained within them, even the vision of Daniel spanning, you know, from his time even till now, it's still being fulfilled. And those prophecies spanning those thousands of years, God is showing to us that he knows the end from the beginning. And so that's why I know I can trust the scriptures. And then the other thing, especially with my discernment now on the cosmology, is that the Sumerian teachings contain and are even centered upon the heliocentric Copernican cosmology. And now that I know that that is a deception and that the Earth has no curvature, it's not moving, we're not spinning in orbit around the sun, that shows to me how far back the deception goes. And that the
Yes.
Anunnaki, speaking about in the Sumerian mythology, that they landed on the Mars and the moon and that they established these colonies and these bases on there. All of that now I understand to be a lie. And if they were lying 6,000 years ago in order to set up the premise for what I see now coming as the alien deception, the Bible tells us that, in my opinion, this whole belief system, scientism, the heliocentric cosmology, it's connected to the coming reign of the Antichrist. And so, in my mind, that shows just how far back, how elaborate, and how well orchestrated this deception has been. So much so that in the scriptures it says that with the strong delusion that even the most elect would be deceived should it be possible. Robbie, you're on mute, brother.
Sorry about that. I had you on mute. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. And it's a massive deception for sure. And I mean, the question really remains, what exactly is the great deception? Now, I've never gone so far as to say that, scientism is that great deception, but I say that could it be that having a scientific worldview makes the deception more easily plausible, makes it easier to believe, because there's one religion that's basically encompassed the entire earth, which is scientism, and it does affect everyone's worldview. And I think pretty much everyone is getting ready for, contact. I mean, you have the scientists talking about the likelihood of extraterrestrial life. You have, Hollywood gearing us that way. So it's not just conspiracy theorists that are talking about the alien agenda. You've got mainstream science now talking about the likelihood. You got NASA constantly looking for life. So it's only a matter of time before, this comes to fruition. The question is, how is the world, and more importantly, how is the church going to accept it? I mean, you have Rome, you got the Vatican, the Pope saying that he's getting ready to baptize aliens. So even in religious circles, you even see kind of a prepping, waiting for this to come. So I look at it like, wait a minute. Well, I'm very careful to call out the great deception, just because many people have tried, and it's something that it would even deceive the elect, even if that were possible. So we're dealing with something pretty major here. But I say that if you have a scientism worldview, you might accept this deception a lot easier. That's kind of where I take it on there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we don't want to define absolutely anything and remain open to whatever may be coming. But certainly the reign of the Antichrist is connected to this great deception. And certainly the belief in an ever expanding universe, and that all the stars are suns, and that they all have planetary systems in orbit around them, and that they possibly could have evolved life, certainly sets up the possibility that the ancient aliens, or this, the coming alien antichrist, that he could be the savior or the creators of humanity, that is being pushed not only by the Ancient Alien series, which is the number one and most watched series in the world now, but we see all of these, the movies, with all the superheroes, and they're being hybrids in some way, or that they are evolved of gods, or in some way supernatural, and it's more superior than humans, that seems to be being pushed by Hollywood and by the Ancient Alien programs, and any program on, like, the even the megalithic structures. I mean, everywhere this seems to be the agenda that is being advanced. Nate, let's go to you, and then we'll go back to Robbie.
Yeah, I definitely think it's interesting, as Robbie said, that the Vatican chimed in and said that they would baptize aliens. And I was a big sci-fi person growing up, all through my growing up. I mean, I saw Star Wars in the theater when I was 4, and on the big screen, and it just sucked me in. And been a big sci-fi movie fan since. A lot of the series, such as even the original. Well, of course, it was reruns for me, but the reruns of the original Star Trek. And as you said, with this supposed ever expanding universe, it opens up all these possibilities. And that's why the Starship Enterprise could cruise around, and every week they're getting into all kinds of different possibilities of life forms and intelligence and all of this. And so certainly as part of that great deception, you definitely have infinite possibilities. It almost kind of reminds me, Zen, of some books that I used to read when I was in junior high. They were paperback books. They were called Choose Your Own Adventure books, right? And as you read through these books, you would come to a point where you had maybe 1, 2, or 3 choices, and
I remember those.
Yeah, and if you chose, if you chose wrong, then your journey ended. So right. I always, when I was young, I always cheated. So I'd have my finger, I'd keep my finger in there in case I guessed wrong, because you don't want the story to end. Right. Then you could, go down door number 2 and see if that worked out. But my point is that, scientism has basically set up our world and the quote universe as this choose your own adventure. And, I think that's scientism and the powers that be are cheating as well, because they'll push one narrative and then sometimes they'll make a course correction. If people are onto things, they'll try to come out with some new, discovery. Or if they get their bluff called on something or they're proven wrong, then they'll switch gears and they say, well, yeah, we used to think this, but now we know, that this is the case because we've sent out a probe, or we've seen the pictures, or the scientists have calculated. So it is, it's a huge shell game of sorts, and it definitely, as Robbie points out, I agree with him that if you have bought into the lies of scientism and that whole system, as he said, it's worldwide. It's cross cultural. And so if you do that, you're definitely going to be more primed for any major, deception that takes place. And, the real scary thing, guys, is that many, many believers have been duped. I was duped. I mean, I was preaching the word for over 20 years. I probably preached many sermons about creation and things that, now I understand the truth. Whereas before, my indoctrination, or science, quote unquote science, blinded me to some things, and I just really couldn't see. I mean, even though the scripture was right there in front of my face, I was not able to see it until, in a sense, those scales were removed from my eyes, and then it was just clear as day. So I do think there's a spiritual component here. It's not just educational. It's not just mental or emotional, but there's a spiritual component to this, both the deception and also the awakening.
Absolutely. And I do want to say for the listening audience that I know probably what we are talking about is may be largely new for a lot of the listeners, and that maybe you have not heard about the things that we're talking about. But all of us have looked into the debate on whether the Earth is flat or a globe, and whether the whole scientism that we're talking about, the assertion that we are living on one of 9 planets in orbit around the sun, and that we live in a heliocentric worldview. Well, anybody anywhere in the world can go out and verify for themselves that there is no curvature, and that even the natural physics and properties of water negate the possibility that the Earth is a globe, or that we are moving at 1,037 miles an hour, which, in my opinion, would make life on the surface of the Earth impossible. But anyways, looking at and examining and opening yourself to this new possibility, it forces you, if you are going to be willing to embrace new possibility, it forces you to accept an entirely new paradigm, and we have to reassess everything we've been taught and what we think of as being truth and reality. And so the three of us have done that, and all of us that have waken up to this truth, which is less than still probably 1% of the population of the world. And so most are still in darkness and deceived in entirely on this particular matter. But doing the research honestly and openly, there's no denying the things that we're talking about. And so it forces you, like the whole Matrix series, that when you unplug from that system and you take the red pill, there's no going back. And nobody then can deceive you in the manner that we were once deceived and brainwashed and indoctrinated into. And so, really, it is like unplugging from the matrix and having new eyes to see. Nobody can lie to you in the way that they were able to previously. And so, and this is what we are trying to help you out there in the world out there that are still not caught on and have not woken up to this paradigm, uh, to help you to do so. And so, I know what we talk about is controversial, but again, um, doing the honest research, it's undeniable. So let me get Robbie, you to comment on that, and if you'd like to, share or speak about anything else, and certainly bring it up, brother.
Sure. Well, I think on this topic, most people, including myself, you come to it and you find it, hilarious. I mean, hysterical. I mean, how in the world can these guys be on the radio right now talking about flat Earth, or thinking that the Earth is not a spinning ball in space? And the reality is that, yeah, everyone comes to this looking at it that way. But when you really take the time and you start looking into it, you're blown away at just how many things come together. I'm blown away not just from a biblical point of view when you start studying scripture from a literal standpoint and seeing how it all comes together, but even from a scientific standpoint, when you actually apply the true method of what science is about, and you go out and you start experimenting, that's exactly it. I mean, Zen, you said it yourself. I mean, you can't find any detectable curvature. And not only that, every experiment to prove the movement of the Earth has failed. So while we've got a real big problem when you're trying to prove Earth from Earth, most times when we're talking about this subject, people start looking into the sky and they say, what about this? Or what about the eclipse? Or what about, and I always say, like, look, if we're going to talk about the Earth, how do we prove the Earth from Earth? It should be fairly easy in 2018 to prove the curvature of the Earth at 8 inches per mile squared, or, like you said, the revolutions, at 1,040 miles per hour. Again, these things just are not being able to be found. Now, this is what the scripture says, and it backs up saying that we're stationary, still, immovable. But also, when you take the true scientific method and apply that, you're also getting this. So, like I said, I think for most people coming to this, either you got to have a really open mind, just entertain it, start looking into it, and just see where it goes, because so many people, had the same reactions at the beginning, including everyone here probably on the panel. But when you start looking into it, you're blown away exactly how big this lie is. I mean, could it be that really everything that you were taught about the universe, the sun, moon, and stars, even the Earth, was a lie? And what we're saying, all in agreement, is yes, that is the reality. So I'll put it over to Pastor Nate.
Yeah, and obviously for me, being in ministry for a couple of decades and being a preacher and teacher of the Word of God, it was very quick for me to go straight to the scriptures. Although I will say, the empirical evidence, the stuff that I could see with my own senses as well, was very intriguing. And the fact that water always seeks its level, when it's not disturbed by some force like wind or whatever. The fact about the, science's own measurement calculation for curvature, and the things that we can witness, like being able to view at times Chicago from the Michigan side, 40 something plus miles away. I mean, even the scientific things were very appealing to me and important. But, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, the biblical record was paramount for me. And as I said before, if I was deceived, if someone like me could be deceived, then certainly anyone could be deceived. Because if a teacher of the word can be deceived, then we all should be willing at least to investigate it for ourselves. And that's what I'm trying to get people to do, and it can be an overwhelming task, as you guys know. I mean, so many people in this truth community have shown hundreds of scripture references that relate to the true biblical creation, that the earth is fixed and immovable. It's a plane. It's got elevation and things like that from mountains, and it's got the valleys, but it is basically a plane. And most people, I guess, when they're first brought to this topic, you have, of course, the indoctrination that kicks in. You have sometimes the cognitive dissonance of not wanting to believe that what you've been told your whole life is a lie. But if we can get people to just even start somewhere small in looking into Scripture itself, especially the believers, and say, do you believe in the Word of God? Do you believe that it's true? Or do you believe the Word of God over man? Because Scripture is clear that we should trust in the Lord rather than in man. And so what I've tried to do is to get folks that are willing to sit down and just take it one piece at a time. And for me, I believe that most important piece from Scripture is found in Genesis chapter 1, particularly the distinction between the creation of, where the seas were gathered together in verse 9, and the dry land appeared in Genesis 1, verse 10, and then compare that, to the next day, which was Genesis 1:14 and following, where the sun, moon, and stars were created, because that shows that according to the Creator himself, that the Earth, the land, was before the sun in particular, and that definitely is a checkmate to the heliocentric model.
Right, and then the whole theory of planetary accretion, that somehow the galaxies spinning, that the suns came together, and then they, in the different orbital ratios around them, then gathered the masses of dust that became the planetoids, and them spinning, they continued in orbit around it. Because the sun and the moon and the other luminaries created on the fourth day were placed into the firmament, which was fitted to the circle of the earth. And so that shows you that, with size and proportion, that the earth is much larger than the luminaries, which hold circuit within the tabernacle of the firmament. And so, there's no way that they could be 108 earths could be put side by side across the diameter of the sun. I mean, it's ridiculous, especially since the sun did not even exist until the fourth day, and the Earth is older than it. Robbie?
Yeah, they lie about everything as far as sizes, distances. I mean, the entire thing.
Right.
It's hard to find anything that they're telling the truth about when you start really looking into all of this information. But it never really sat right with me, anyways, because, like, for example, if you've got a dining room, and you want to light up this dining room, why are you going to choose a light bulb like 80 times bigger than your dining room? Like, it makes no sense, Like, even humans, we can light stuff properly without having to do that. So the very fact that, the dimensions that they say the sun is, it just never really, it didn't make any sense. But again, if all of a sudden you're talking about these billions and trillions of galaxies, and again, that's where you lose the significance, the worth, anything to do with creation itself. But the reality is this, that everything that we see in the sky was created for us. That's it. We're it.
Right.
I mean, we're centerpiece. Yeah. And this whole notion that, we came from a cosmic accident of nothing, exploded and created everything. And yet, they say we're the crazy ones. But yet this is the scientific definition of how everything began, is nothing created everything. And,
Right.
you can't do that under the scientific method. There's nothing scientific about that. So, yeah, it's just a disconnect. Satan's worked very, very hard for a very long time, getting people to the point where they would rather believe nothing than a creator. That's just how tragic, of a system that we're in. But everything that we hear, whether it's new exoplanets that are discovered, or TRAPPIST-1, like 40 trillion light years away, and just these distances. I mean, I tell people sometimes, just to get perspective, 1 light year is 40 trillion miles. Or sorry, I think it's 7 trillion. Sorry, 1 light year is 7 trillion miles. Just consider that, how crazy that is. 7 trillion with a T. That's 1 light year. And then these distances they say that they're seeing, what kind of magical telescope sees this, right? It's the same type
Right.
of idea when it comes to the moon landing, like we're all of a sudden a quarter of a million miles and they're talking on a landline telephone in the White House, right?
Right.
So these are the
Mhm.
type of things that people just have to start questioning. And I mean, most recently, Steph Curry and a couple of other NBA players came out questioning the moon landing. Well, I'm not sure if you saw Zen. I put a couple videos up on my channel, Celebrate Truth, but the amount of backlash and what they experienced was unbelievable. It was worse
Right.
than coming out as a flat earther. You dare question the moon. They were equating it with one step away from being a Holocaust denier. They were
Oh my
saying you don't even.
gosh.
Yeah, they were. I mean, it was bad. And I mean,
Oh
I
my gosh.
I pretty much called that Steph Curry was pretty much going to, do a press conference, and he was going to say he was just joking, because I'm sure
Mhm.
his manager, his agent, his advertisers, everyone were coming against him in a very aggressive manner, saying, you do not dare question this. You take it back. So of course he came back and said, oh, he was just joking. But if you listen to the podcast, he wasn't. But I think it's really important that, without fear, we start to question these things, as simple things, just like the moon landing. I mean, next year will be 50 years. And yet since then, there's never been another country to put their flag up there.
Mhm.
There's never been the first woman to walk on the moon. There's never been the first black man to walk on the moon. I mean, all of these firsts would be amazing. And yet no one's demanding them. I think that is where the disconnect is. But I tell everyone I'm talking to, it doesn't matter if I'm on a plane, going to a conference, or I'm shooting a documentary and running into people, I always get into the moon landing, because if they didn't go to the moon, how far can they go? and why would they lie? And those are the two pivotal questions, right? But really, it comes down to why would they lie? Even if someone's willing to entertain the moon landing, okay, maybe they lied about it. Okay, sure, but why would they lie? And that's where the whole discussion really gets serious, is because
Right.
if they didn't go to the moon, then there's some massive deceptions in place, and really, that's where the investigation has to go, is the moon landing. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, well, look, doesn't matter what topic you're thinking of or how outlandish it is, start with the moon landing. And thank goodness that the next generations, like Generation X, Generation Z, or whatever, all these different generations that are up and coming now, they're really starting to actually look in and being very skeptical of the moon landing, which is great because they're starting to ask questions. But just like the other day when Steph Curry came out and on a podcast saying he didn't believe they landed on the moon. Well, if you start to look at the footage and you see exactly how they came across, I don't think many people are going to be getting the courage in any significant levels to dare question the moon landing, because my goodness, I mean, they were saying you're literally a Holocaust denier if you question the moon landing. And coming up like that, it's going to scare a lot of people. So unfortunately, fear is kind of their motivator to keep people from investigating these questions. And really, what's the harm? What's the harm in just asking questions, look into it? But for me, I tell everyone, look into the moon, because if they didn't land on the moon, your journey just begins there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in my opinion, when you do examine the moon landings, it's evident. Even the way that the astronauts acted after, with the press conference when they had supposedly accomplished the greatest feat of mankind ever in the history of the world, to walk on the moon and to return safely from such a journey. I mean, they look like somebody killed their mother, and then the whole thing of the Bart Cyberill and his challenging the astronauts gone wild, their behavior is curiously odd, considering that all these guys, if they really had gone to the moon. But I mean, just examining the technology and what they say they were able to achieve, the whole thing with the lunar, the moon, the lunar module. Uh, I mean, in the rover, where was that thing? I mean, did they inflate it? Blow it up, and it just all of it, because they couldn't have carried it. I mean, just so many questions, and the fact that there's no looking under where they supposedly landed, that the jet, the rocket would have disturbed all the dust and everything, and yet there's no dust on the supposed the lander pads. And I mean, just so many weird things, the anomalies with the shadow.
And they can't find the telemetry data. The telemetry data is all gone.
Right,
It's all
all
missing.
lost.
I mean, that would.
The
Oh
greatest
yeah, it's just. But
accomplishment in man's
yeah, but with
history.
Steph Curry, the saddest part about it is NASA reaches out to Steph Curry, this NBA player, and says, "Hey, what proved you we landed on the moon?" Their proof for landing on the moon, they showed him moon rocks.
What? Are you serious? Oh my
I'm dead
gosh.
serious. That was their proof. And I'm thinking, like, really, like moon rocks? Are we really at that point where that's going to be their proof? I mean, that's going to be, hey, here you go. Check it out. Hold it. There's a moon rock. Okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
of course they landed on the moon. I mean, I'm just thinking, my goodness, man. But people aren't using their brains anymore. I mean, really, if you look at it, they basically lost. They don't know where any of the telemetry data went. And again, that would substantiate pretty much everything: altitude, fuel consumption, all sorts of metrics, And I mean, it's one thing where people say, well, even if they had it, you probably wouldn't believe it. Well, that's not the point. The point is, it's like 400 boxes, reel to reel data. I mean, and they don't know where any of it is. I mean, that is so incredibly suspicious. Why would they either destroy it, get rid of it, miss, like whatever? The fact is that they cannot find it. And that would be probably the best proof as far as the actual data. This is empirical type stuff. It's really tough to fake. And sure, could they fake it? Yeah, but that's a different discussion. The point is that it's all completely gone. And now what they'll do to substantiate they landed on the moon is go to NASA and they're going to hand you a moon rock. See, there's proof. I just thought that was really funny. Seriously,
Yeah,
moon
that is
rocks.
funny. Especially considering, the moon rock they gave to the ambassador of the Netherlands being tested is found to be a petrified rock.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so that in itself was debunked long ago, and for them to bring up that again is just laughable. I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I challenge anybody here listening that even if you have not begun your journey into questioning cosmology, look at the moon landings and test whether what they said they accomplished is even achievable. Because NASA has even come out now with the so called Project Orion and their attempts to send a mooned, a manned mission to Mars, that they are unable to get beyond the Van Allen radiation belts. And they can't protect the astronauts now from going out and beyond. And yet, with the Apollo missions, they said they have done this multiple times, and yet nobody experienced or sensed anything. There was no protections put in place, and so that in itself, brings to question with regard to uh, the veracity of what they are saying into question. It brings all of that into question. If they can't do it now, how could they do it back then? I mean, it just does not make any sense. Robbie, comment on that, and then we'll go to Nate.
Yeah, well, no, I think that pretty much sums it up. It comes down to the moon landing. Anytime we're talking cosmology, you have to start looking into the moon landing, because a lot of stuff happens, in the 60s and 70s. You start getting into even just a little bit before that with the Antarctica Treaty. Just some really, really peculiar, weird things going on there. But really, yeah, the idea that they went no problem to the moon and back in the 60s and 70s, and yet it's been almost 50 years. And yet nada, and now they're talking in the recent video I just put up on my channel. They're talking about going back to the moon in the late 2020s, But again, they'll push that. It just doesn't matter whether it's Virgin Galactic or it's SpaceX. They constantly set these dates like they're going to have trips and vacations and hotels in space and all. And it never happens. It's unbelievable that they get away with that with all these people's deposits. I mean, $250,000 deposit. And Richard Branson is just eating it up. So is Elon Musk. And they just take these deposits and they never ever go. And that's just the sad part about it. But people will die, never gone, and maybe they'll pass it on to their sons or daughters or whatever. I'm not sure what kind of plan they have there. But it is just tragic when you start actually looking into the promises and the fact that really in any technology, we're actually advancing. But the only technology that's going backwards is space. Go figure.
Right. Yeah, and even Trump just promised that we were going to go back to the moon or something like that. Nate, would you care to comment? And also, brother, can you speak about if you've looked into the moon landings and what you think about all that?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I was planning on sharing that about a year plus ago, before I came into the understanding of the flat Earth. I had actually, in some of my free time, I would dabble in some different subjects. I'd watch videos about, Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and different things. I've always been fascinated by, those things and the possibility, could something like that exist, in our world. But I did actually look into the moon landing. And so the moon landing and also the JFK assassination were probably two of the most important foundations, pre-flat Earth foundations, because all of those evidences that you and Robbie listed for the moon landing being a hoax, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you've got also the different sources of light that can be seen because of the shadows, the opposing shadows. You've got, you've the angles, you've got the whole Stanley Kubrick, situation and the clues in the movie, like The Shining and other situations, the connection, of NASA to Disney, Walt Disney, and the sci-fi book guy. I mean, all of these different connections. Those are very strange bedfellows. You wouldn't normally have expected those guys to be, in the Rat Pack together, but nonetheless, you can make those connections. And I think also, they call it conspiracy, but now we know for a fact that Kennedy was assassinated, and most likely it was, government that did that. And so that the Kennedy assassination was an important piece for me as well as the moon, because then it opened up the possibility and the great likelihood that even our government at times cannot be trusted. And of course, NASA is a government agency, and so those two things I think were paramount, because once I found out about the true biblical cosmology, the true creation, I didn't have a very far leap. A lot of people would say, well, for them, a big thing might be, well, our government wouldn't lie to us. I already knew the government had lied to us many times. And the other thing people would say, not only did, the government wouldn't lie to us, but then they would say, well, what would there be to gain, from
Right.
lying about the globe? Well, I obviously, with my religious, and study background, I was already able to leap that hurdle pretty quickly, because as I understood scripture, it said that Satan was the quote, God or ruler of this world, of this age. And so if he's the ruler of the age, if he can take Jesus up to an exceeding high mountain and show him all the kingdoms of the world and say, all these, kingdoms, everything that you can see, I will give you if you bow down and worship me. Jesus didn't say, oh, come on, Satan, you don't have any authority over these kingdoms. You don't have any authority in this world. Jesus didn't say that. Jesus went the other
Right.
route of quoting scripture. But yeah, so those things were important foundations. Certainly the moon landing hoax and the Kennedy assassination, among a few other, quote unquote conspiracies. But we have, of course, more and more information now, and even documents that have been, released through the Freedom of Information Act and other things expiring. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many connections. It can't be, a coincidence.
Right. There's a documentary that's just come out not long ago on Netflix. It's called Inside Freemasonry, and it gives you exclusive inside look at the rituals and the brotherhood and all that. But in the second show of that series, the at the very beginning of the episode, there's this brother, one of these Freemason brothers that comes on, and he's talking about a conspiracy, and he speaks about how the Freemasons are the cause and how they celebrate their responsibilities in perpetuating three of what he says are the largest conspiracies ever to have occurred. Well, he actually makes mention of four of them. And he says the JFK Kennedy's assassination, the moon landings, and then also the sinking of the Titanic, which killed a lot of the people that were against the creation of a central bank here in America and the Federal Reserve. And then also the latest one was the killing off of the electric car, and how that perpetuated the petroleum industry. But I thought that was very telling and very interesting, and it's how I mean, those are major circumstances and situations that really dictated and changed the fate and destiny of this country, and the world. And yet, most of the people would not even understand the depth and the profundity of what that guy was speaking about, and were not able to wrap their minds around the enormity of what he just openly declared there on that particular show. But when we come back from this break, I'd like to talk about the Apollo 11, the documentary and the movie, the film footage that Bart Sibrel brings out in the Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Because to me, that, I mean, it undeniably, um, confirming as to what we are talking about, what we're speaking about here. But we'll be right back, everyone.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is the Dark Side of Purgatory. It used to be Hijacker's show. It will be converting over next week to Robbie Davidson's show, Celebrate Truth. And just wanted to quickly remind the listening audience that Revolution Radio is a corporate-free, commercial-free radio platform of truth, and that we have 92 different hosts coming to you 24/7 on Studios A and Studios B, and that those of you that can, there are bills that need to be paid, not a lot, but certainly if you can, please do make a donation. Right now, I am offering people signed autographed copies of some of my books for that donation. So those of you that can, please do go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button. If you give over $25 to the radio network, just
Zen, I think you're muted there, brother.
Oh, I apologize for that, brother. Sorry about that, everybody. Just wanted to let everybody know really quickly. I'm your host, Zen Garcia, and that this show will next week go over to Robbie Davidson, and that it will be named Celebrate Truth. And also, really quickly, for those that can, please do donate to the network and support the 92 hosts that use this platform as truth on Studios A and Studios B, and that we appreciate you doing so in advance. One last thing, for those that donate over $25, you can request an autographed copy of one of my books and just provide your address. I will personalize it to you, or if you have a family member or friend that you would like it shipped to, that I will get it out to you in less than a week's time, and that know in advance we appreciate your support and your listening audience, your attention and your trust in what we do and the information that we bring forth. We greatly appreciate all of you, and without you, we would, not be able to do what we do. And so, anyways, I was speaking about before we went to break there about how the documentary A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, and the information that Bart Cybrell was able to gain access to, and the video. I mean, I can't even believe that they sent that back to him, which shows that the astronauts utilized the window of the lunar module to fake that the Earth was spherical in shape, and it's mind-boggling, because if the Earth were truly spherical in shape and ball in orientation, and that the astronauts were, at the moon 250 million miles away and looking back at the Earth, and it was a small little ball like they show in this particular video. If that was the truth, why would they have to fake it? I mean, and then the other thing is, if they lie to us then, and what why should we trust them now if they are advancing a lie and trying to perpetuate it as truth, and they've done this all these years, and they can't replicate what they said that they did back in the 60s? Why should we believe them now? I mean, what is it, the budget for NASA is like $53 million a day? I mean, it's insane. And what are we getting for our money? Robbie?
Exactly. Yeah, actually now it's 56. It's actually been raised. It's 56 million
God.
per day.
Insane.
Now they've just actually raised the budget. So yeah, exactly. What are we getting for that money? This is the taxpayer dollars, and what are they doing other than finding new Earth-like planets and 18 trillion light years away? And scientists discovered this and scientists discovered that. It really comes down to the moon landing, and it's so important. You brought up the documentary A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which is phenomenal. Another great one to look at is Astronauts Gone Wild.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows how Bart Sibrel is approaching a lot of the different astronauts that were a part of Apollo 11 and saying, hey, were you willing to swear on the Bible that you landed on the moon? And they get pretty aggressive. It's pretty interesting reactions you get from all of them in that film as well. So yeah, those are great resources. I touch on those. I use clips in I think it's in The Global Lie. It's also in Scientism Exposed and Scientism Exposed 2. And I devote an entire chapter in my new book, Scientism Exposed, Hiding the True Creator of Creation, on the moon, because it is so important, and getting into NASA and just showing the origins. And when you start really researching the origins of NASA and finding out, what it's about, and kind of the forefathers, it's really, deceptive in the sense that there's a cult, there's satanic ties, all sorts of really weird spirituality that goes on. And you had brought up, talking about the moon, and I think they released the first movie this year, a few months ago, I think it was, First Man.
Right.
But also CBS did a series called Strange Angel, and it was a documentary on Jack Parsons. And what was really interesting about this was that they're no longer hiding the satanic nature of Jack Parsons and the stuff he was involved with.
Wow.
They're actually glorifying it. They're actually putting it out right in front for everyone to see, to make it actually cool, or, for the next generation. But I was just blown away at Strange Angel, how they show all the ties, that he was into sex magic, that he was into Aleister Crowley type, Luciferian type magic, and they don't hide it at all. So we're at a point now where they're not even trying to hide the history of NASA and some of the forefathers, as far as Jack Parsons, or you're getting into, Werner von Braun. You're getting into a lot of these different characters. But most interesting when it came to Jack Parsons is this guy was a heavy Satanist. I mean, admittedly so, doing a lot of really rituals and different things. So again, it's just really strange that we're in a world now that aren't even trying to hide that, because for the last, I would say a few decades, they have been really trying to scrub Jack Parsons. But it just seemed like now they're just like, you know what, forget it. Let's just get it out there. Show everyone he was a Satanist. No big deal. No one's going to care. And no one did care. No one really did care. And that's the sad part about it, is that even when people see this type of activity, they don't really care. And they really should, when they're looking at, this is NASA getting $56 million a day from taxpayers. And what are they up to? What are they doing? And yeah, exactly. If they lied to us about the moon, what else are they lying to us about? And I say all the time, it's not just about what they've lied to us about. It's why they lied, to prepare us for something to come. And I think that's really important.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very important aspect to all of what we are talking about. And that's the reason why we are having this discussion this evening, and why all of us feel so passionately about this particular topic with regard to the cosmology, the scientism, and exposing the lies and the deception of that whole matrix of deceit. And so, Pastor Nate, have you seen the what I'm talking about with regard to the Apollo 11, the footage that was released on Bart Sibrel's Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon?
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched all of that. I think I've seen repeats of bits and pieces from different folks from compilations. But yeah, I thought, especially too, of course, it was shocking about here they were supposedly in the command module, and they were supposedly talking to Houston, and just talking all casual, like, okay, so we're going to turn off these lights now, and basically they're talking about covering the window, and you can see it. I mean, that's the camera was rolling. The fact that footage fell into the wrong hands from the standpoint of the
or
protectors,
the right hands,
the right hands from the standpoint of truth, that's amazing. And the thing is that the scripture is really clear about lies can even become a snare to us. And so it warns people who have a practice of lying and have a practice of deceit and secret sin, all of those different categories. It's very clear that it's gonna trip you up sometime. And so as careful as they might think they have been, there's so many details that go into trying to fake a moon landing, you're not going to be able to do it perfectly because you've got humans involved. So yeah, I mean, that was very eye-opening footage, and I couldn't believe it when I first saw it months and months ago. And then with that, the reaction, as Robbie mentioned, in The Astronauts Gone Wild, the aggressive nature. If you think about it, most of these men are probably good, patriotic men. They tried to serve their country, but they find themselves, guilt-ridden because of the lies and deceptions over years, decades even. And I think just about, Neil Armstrong was just about the only one that didn't have a strong aggressive reaction. Just about everybody else, they're either kicking them in the rear with their foot or punching them out,
Right.
And so you look at, what's the spirit behind that? And the critical thing for me was he was like, hey, all you gotta do, here's your opportunity. Just swear on the Holy Bible that, you went to the moon.
Right.
Even if somebody said, well, I don't believe it's godly to swear, but I'll affirm, I mean, you didn't even get that from a single person.
Mhm.
And I think that's a window into the fact that these men believe in God. I mean, they know that God is real, and they know that what they
don't
have
want to
done.
go there,
Yeah, they do not want to, they probably already feel like they're in enough trouble. They definitely don't want to be doing that, especially later in their years when they realize, I'm getting closer and closer to judgment. And so, yeah, those were shocking documentaries that really, unveiled some things and gave us a window into what really happened.
Yeah, I think there was one that did it, but very hesitantly. But yeah, the fact that nobody else would,
Yeah.
yeah, it's certainly telling. But undeniably, when you examine, and anybody can go to YouTube right now and just type in Apollo 11 deception, and it'll bring up this video that was released that captures behind the scenes how the Neil Armstrong and the other astronaut that was with him, Buzz Aldrin, how they faked the showing the Earth as a sphere. I mean, and there's no question with regard to the fact that they are doing this, and that it's purposely being uh, fabricated in order to support the whole belief that the Earth is a ball. For whatever reason, they wanted people to believe that the Earth was a sphere, going that far back. And again, I think it's telling, and it leads back to that there are spiritual forces, and that Satan, the adversary of man, that this is his whole agenda. And again, I think it's tied to the coming of the Antichrist, and that they needed people to believe that the Earth is a ball like the other orbs, the luminaries that we see in the sky spinning around the sun, and that all of the other stars are perpetual suns that have planetary systems in orbit around them, in order to fabricate the belief that extraterrestrials come from out there, and that they could have evolved millions of years in advance of us, and a long time ago coming visiting us here, that they seeded humanity. And really, that's what's being perpetuated by Hollywood and all of the other, the pagan cultures and civilizations, the belief systems like the Sumerian on the Anunnaki. And so it's not just what we're telling you. I mean, this is what they're telling you. And so, we're just kind of trying to help you to realize and to make sense of all of it and what it's leading to. Robbie?
Yeah, it's absolutely a massive spiritual deception that's put in place. And until you can kind of start to see that, it's a really tough topic to grasp when you're looking at the magnitude. And while a lot of people will look at, well, why would they lie? Or they're looking at people. It's really the spiritual force behind these people that is paramount, that we have to really zero in on and kind of look at the nature of what Satan represents. He's the father of all lies, and really that's really where his power is in lies. So if he's lied to us about our origins, about who we are, where we're going, all of these type of things, then he can really empower us in ways that are not good at all. And that is really what is really important here, is getting to the nature of, what is really going on in this world. And when you start to understand that the Bible is very clear on, right from Genesis, how this earth was created, why it was created, and you see the assault that's come against it through scientism. And while a lot of people applauded science and all the things that it was to offer, most of what we're being taught today is nothing more than scientism. It is a religion. It is an agenda, a belief, a deception. And that's why it's so important to wake up to the lies of scientism, to understand the difference between science and scientism, because everyone here on the panel, we have no problems with true science. Science is a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, most of what we're seeing today in the world is scientism, and Satan knew that he could masquerade in a belief system, in a deception, that people wouldn't really see it for what it was. And that is what's so critical about this discussion, is understanding that he is the father of lies. He's behind this. And number one is trying to destroy the credibility of the Bible. And most people walk away from the Bible because of what science had taught them. And because it's at such an early age, right at grade 1, you're spinning the globe and you're taught all these things about the universe. And instantly when you come to the Bible, and if you're going to look at it literal, then you got to say, wait a minute, someone's wrong here. And of course, science is never wrong. It's always right, is what we're taught. So therefore, the Bible has to go, or it has to be a storybook or allegory or poetic or something to make you feel good, like a crutch. And the reality is, it truly is the Word of God. Every ounce of it is truly spoken, and we can rely on it. And when you come out of the lies and the deceptions of scientism and of Satan's power, you get to see the freedom there is in the Word of God, and what the Bible represents and what it teaches about the reality of life and who we are.
Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit here, and ask both of you guys with regard to the end of days, and because I believe that we are that generation, and that Christ specified that when you saw the blooming of the fig tree in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, that would be the generation which would see the fulfillment of all things. And so I wanted to ask you guys about what you thought about that parable, about the fig tree, what it's connected to, and whether you do believe that we are at the end of days, and why. So, Pastor Nate, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Robbie.
Yeah, honestly, I've had to kind of reconsider a lot of things that I previously believed and even taught, because I came out of a group that was very, I guess they were sort of, afraid of talking much about Revelation, for prophecy, those types of things. So I'm going to be real honest and tell you that a lot of the things that I previously believed, I am restudying. Because some of those things I realized were, perhaps just traditions, that were passed down. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of, symbolism, obviously, to the fig tree and Israel. And, does that tie into, modern Israel, that was established in the mid-40s? A lot of people have differing opinions about that. I almost kind of think that, we should all be doubling down as far as our diligence to try to study these things. And, I've always thought, some items in Revelation, we may not know exactly how it's going to take place, but the purpose of it is to tell us to be ready, to be watching. Right. The things that speak about the signs, there'll be signs in the heavens. And of course, I've always tried to examine those, for myself, and not just be too quick to believe what other teachers have taught, because everybody and their mother has an opinion about what's happening on a certain date in September, and which year, and a lot of it hasn't been proven. And I always think of those scriptures, particularly in Deuteronomy, that talk about the false prophet, and I think
Right.
there's a lot of well-meaning false prophets out there. I definitely don't want to be one of them, but I can certainly agree that Jesus spoke these parables and spoke about things that would happen, at the end of the age, because he wanted his followers to have at least a clue, and certain events would take place. Um, and I know there's differing views on the book of Revelation itself, but it seems to me that I could definitely agree 100% that we are in those end times. How far along are we? I'm not exactly sure, but it's opened up prophecy as being a much more important topic for me,
Yeah.
because when I wasn't when I wasn't woke to these things, my attitude was honestly, well, I know whose side I'm on, and whenever I got challenged with something in Revelation that I didn't quite understand, I would always just say, I got to remind myself that the overall theme of Revelation is that we will have victory through Jesus the Messiah. And
Yeah.
so sometimes people can get lost in a lot of details as long as they can remember the key things. But yeah, I agree. We're definitely somewhere in that end times time frame, and we do need to try to be watchmen on the wall, to be discerning. And I love the scripture. Is it from the Chronicles that spoke about the men of Issachar? It said that they, knew what Israel should do. So these were men who understood the times, and knew what Israel should do. And I think that's a responsibility, for all believers, but especially teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. Robbie, I want to pose to you the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would agree with Pastor Nate and what he talked about. For me, it's about making sure that you're really careful. There's a lot of views out there. I think that when it gets into the birth pains, when it gets into certain things that were prophesied, we're to be ready. We're to be aware of the things that are going on. Be prayerful, mindful of that. But as far as choosing dates or saying that we're exactly in the end times and that type of thing, if we're in the very early stages. For me, that would be it. I'm not one that believes in pre-tribulation rapture or anything like that. So I'm one that we go through it. I think the world's going to get a lot worse, not better.
Absolutely.
So yeah, as we progress through this, I mean, we're to kind of be prepared. We've got a task to do. But the world's going to get a lot more wicked. We're just starting to see the early signs of it. A lot of times people were saying, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, oh my goodness, we're in the end times. Look how wicked it is. But I mean, as we can see, it's definitely getting a lot more wicked. I would say a good indication that when we're really close is when, I would say like pedophilia would be like legalized. I mean, it's a pretty good, getting pretty close to depravity. You can't get much more
Yeah.
depraved
Right.
than that. When it's widespread, bestiality is legalized almost, on a wide scale. When we start seeing the depravity going to that extent, because the Bible's clear that there's a normal way to sin. Most men sin a normal way, but then there's a perverted way, like an adverse way that is outside the realm of just normality. So we're starting to see that happen in our culture in different countries, where we're getting into different areas of that. I would say another thing too for me is when we see the temple being rebuilt, I think we're getting pretty close. Like when you actually see that, because a lot of people are, predicting dates and they're looking at timelines. And I always sit there and say, well, there's a few things in scripture that are pretty clear. And one would be the temple being rebuilt. And a lot of stuff has to take place there, on where the Dome of the Rock is, and just a lot of, conflicts that are going on there. When there is a peace treaty there, when the temple is being rebuilt, I would say, wow, we're really close, regardless where you are in your eschatology. But I think it's important that we're diligent, we're discerning, but also we're not getting carried away and telling people so much that, yeah, we're totally in the end times and this is it and this is the generation. Just because if all of a sudden, we go for, how long is the generation, and there's debates around how long the generation is, right? And there's been a lot of talk of that. So I just always say that rather than, choosing dates or saying specifically 100% we're here or we're there, we say, there's a lot of things pointing to the fact that we could very well be here, but I don't want to ever say 100% because God's the only one that knows 100% when and where
Right.
and at times and seasons and that type of thing, especially when it comes to specific days. And I know none of us here we're calling specific days saying, oh, the end of the world is December, whatever,
Right.
2028. But I think that when we start looking at these, I think we can all recognize that we're close. But even if we weren't, we still have a job to do. The Great Commission is still relevant, whether we're in the end times or we're not. And we've got to be preaching the gospel. We've got to be telling people about the saving truth that is offered, especially when we're dealing with a lost and a hurting world such as ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, with regard to what the Masonic, the Satanists, the Luciferians have declared even for themselves, that they're supposed to be, according to Albert Pike's vision of the three world wars, that there would be this fomented war between the Muslim and Christian nations, that they would exhaust each other, and then the communists, atheists would kind of step into that power vacuum, assume control. We see China and Russia now being propped up as being, the strongest countries in the world, and um, with America in such debt and unable to even pay our bills. I mean, we're definitely being brought to our knees. But then they say that after that all occurs and there's this global financial whatever, that the Antichrist and the whole Luciferian doctrine of Satanism will be brought out into the public, and that then Christianity and those that are um, that don't know where to put their particular trust and faith, that they will then embrace Luciferianism as the doctrine of choice for the New World Order, and that's kind of what they are trying to set up in the protocols. It speaks about the this coming king, which we know to be the Antichrist, the false. So when you see the Antichrist appear on the scene, that would certainly be an indicator for the end of days, and we don't yet
Yeah.
see that, but certainly that will be a significant sign for the end of the age. But anyways, yeah, I think we're supposed to all just really recognize the signs and the seasons. Things are definitely accelerating. The depravity um, good. What is good is evil. Evil is good, is what it says in the scriptures. Didn't they legalize bestiality in Canada, or is that
No, that's kind of a misnomer. I mean,
okay?
it,
I was
it it's
wondering.
kind of not technically. They've just redefined it, but it's not 100% legalized. Like
Okay.
a lot of people were running with that story, thinking it was completely legalized. Well, no, it's not. It's not actually true. Although it's still a
Okay.
slippery slope, and they've opened it up to be interpreted to move down that path. But no, it's not.
Oh goodness, that's
Yeah,
crazy. But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the Alice Bailey and that whole 10-point plan of destroying the family and legalizing abomination, that is one of the things that the New World Order is moving to, is to secure and to normalize abominations such as bestiality and, as you said, pedophilia. And when
sure. And
that
this whole
happens,
gender war
we
as
know.
well too is a pretty massive thing. There's
Yeah,
a pretty spiritual force behind the whole gender assault
right.
against God's creation is another one right there.
Yeah, absolutely. The homosexuality and the transgender, that whole agenda, and we see, that's on the forefront of what, as far as equal rights and civil rights and all that being that pushed in this day and age. So, yeah, a lot of things going on in the world. But um, so let me ask both of you guys, with regard to your study and your focus, what are some of the other things that you are examining or are interested in studying? And for you, Robbie, any other topics of interest that you'll be making movies on or bringing forth videos upon in
Well, I mean, I'm
particular?
always doing like videos and stuff, and I guess primarily would be like, getting into cosmology, but I touch on pretty much all the different areas that need exposing as far as the world's lies. I mean, I will touch on the whole LGBT thing that's moving along. I've touched on even other religions such as Islam and just the force that it has in like Europe and what it's doing, with different countries and stuff. So I look at different branches and different arms. I mean, I got into the monetary order. You were getting into the Federal Reserve and all of that stuff. I studied for that many years. I haven't really done anything, as of late, but I will touch on it if something, comes to light for sure, like in the news. But I like to branch out and talk about a lot of different things. But primarily, I think would be the gender war, the LGBT movement. I think it's very, very destructive. Just the power and what they're able to do. I mean, in a very short time, they've been able to change bathrooms, for goodness sakes. They've literally been able to change the definition of what bathrooms are. And I think there's something behind the scenes that's a lot more sinister than we take it. Like, it's not just about equal rights and that type of thing. It's about demanding their rights be imposed on everyone else.
Exactly.
It's not, and again, when you start looking into it further, you start to see that, they have a plan in place. I think, in the 70s outlined it very well when it came to the homosexual movement on how they were going to do this. And one way they were going to do it was they were going to do it through Hollywood. And they said, rather than being the actor and actresses, we need to become the directors and the producers and the owners of studios. And this is exactly what they've done, where you really can't find a movie these days without homosexuality in it. I mean, it will just be some ridiculous, just normal movie, and then they'll just throw in a homosexual or a lesbian or, and usually it's the Christian in those movies that are, just horrible. Like, you wouldn't even want to be around them. They're just so awful. And yet the homosexual or the lesbians are the nicest people in the world, And this was all done in his book. I forget the name of his book, but he did it in the 70s. But he outlined exactly how they were going to do it, how they were going to get the public perception, but also how they were going to get people to rally behind them. Even if they weren't for that sexuality, they were going to defend them and defend their rights to do what they need to do. So they really used a lot of psychology. And, I never ever saw the gender war coming. I mean, I saw a lot of perversions happening, but I never saw the level of attacking just male and female, for goodness sakes. I mean, I don't know if you guys heard just recently, but Miss Spain, there was a pageant that just took place, and Miss Spain was a transvestite. It was an actual man that won Woman of Spain. Like, the prettiest woman in Spain it was won by a man. Well, I mean, this is insanity. And now you
can't tell anymore. I mean,
and now you got men that are basically transvestites that are going into women's sports, and they're completely dominating. I mean, how is that fair? How is that fair to women, right? But we're just so completely, it's lunacy what's going on. It's so crazy. Right. And I mean, if someone had told us this, 30 years ago, we wouldn't have believed them. We wouldn't have not believed them that, that a beauty pageant, of women men would be winning it. Be like, what are you talking about? No, never will happen. This is happening. So while we're talking about end times, and this is frightening, how crazy is it going to get? I think we're going to see it really getting crazy. I mean, but it happens where it desensitizes us, where it goes on for a while, where we get normalized to it. For example, we're not really phased now by homosexuality or lesbianism. Now the big phase is the transgender, right? Now we just, okay, whatever. So that's what they do. They kind of get you, basically ready and willing as far as understanding it. I think Madonna said it best. She said, if you see something and it shocks you at the beginning, if you see it over and over and over again, you'll eventually see it as normal. And that's exactly what Madonna did. I mean, it's so striking that Madonna wouldn't even let her children watch television. I mean, some of the biggest Hollywood players and some of the biggest moguls like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, they never let their kids watch TV. What does that tell you? Right? What does that tell you? Right. So we're dealing with a really twisted world, and it does influence and it does affect us. But I think it's going to get a whole lot more wicked. And I think the assault, when we talk about, the assault of creation, when it comes to cosmology, again, to me, the same attack can come on the created order, male and female. And that's exactly what we're seeing. All of creation is coming under attack in many different ways.
Yeah, and the normalized harmony that used to exist. Like, I mean, I don't know where you guys are with this, but in my opinion, Michelle Obama, I believe it was a man as well, and that she used to be a guy named Michael LaVaughn Robinson, and there's a whole history there, and that Obama had been proven to be gay since his, for a very long time, that he's been known to be gay, and so that's something that's been right in your face, and nobody said anything. Well, what's her name? I forget her. Joan Collins or what? Not.
Yeah, I remember Joan who it Rivers. Was. Yeah, she said
Joan
it.
Rivers.
Like 2 years later.
And ended up dead on that. But Let me get you to comment on this, Nate.
Yeah, you were referencing earlier, I think Isaiah chapter 5, about the woe to those who call good evil
Yeah.
and evil good. It's describing a world that is really spiritually and morally upside down, and
Right.
it's opposite. And Robbie made some great points about that, particularly with some of the different movements now that show that. And I do think it goes back to the whole spiritual connection and deception, because again, this goes right back to Genesis 1 and the actual created order, male and female. And
Mm.
so, if you're Satan, if you're the god of this world, if you're trying to uh, keep believers from salvation, if you're trying to to twist things and to keep other people who haven't obeyed the gospel from coming to the truth, that's a huge thing. It's a huge stumbling block to put in their path. And so, we have the whole created order that goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2 that really is under attack. And so yeah, I just wanted to make that point. And for myself, as far as other areas of study, I do believe that God's has specifically called me into the biblical creation arena. I have 3 videos out so far that are very specific to that. I have the Genesis 1 creation foundations. That's the first one I did. The second one was on the sun and the moon. And a few weeks ago, I uploaded my third biblical cosmology video on the stars. And so, I'm only a few months into this as far as being a public figure who's uploading videos. So I've still, got several videos related to biblical cosmology that I want to put out, relating to the fixed nature of our plane, the motionless aspect, and then some of the other scriptures that talk about, putting a compass on the deep and putting a boundary where the proud waves would stop. I mean, those are all very interesting scriptures that I want to address from my own perspective, because as both of you know, I have a very straightforward kind of old school style. I like in my videos, they're not highly technical. I don't have, vast editing skills. I'm not going to win any, Flatty awards for, for spectacular, special effects or anything. Pretty much what you see with Nate's videos is, hey, we're going to get into the Bible and let's see, what does the Word of God say about these subjects? Now let's compare it to what the world says. Let's compare it to what science says. And do you see the difference? Do you see the discrepancy? And then typically, the last thing I'll address in my videos is, who are you going to believe? You've got to make a choice, because if you don't make a choice, you're going to default to the mainstream. And that's going to get you down the path of scientism. Now, there are other, topics that I will be studying, have begun to study. I mentioned prophecy, of course, is one of the areas that I think I need to do some work in and to reconsider some of the things that I've always believed and taught. Certainly, as everybody knows, in the truth community the last month or so, there's been a big dust up relating to Torah and grace, the New Testament, Old Testament. So, I'm fairly new to being involved in communities where that was a big thing. And so as I've freely, shared with people, I'm studying a variety of these topics so that I know, here's what I believe the scriptures teach, and understanding what are some of the other views out there. Because I think that, now that I am a public figure, it's important for me to examine those areas, very diligently. And it is something that, it's going to take some time for me to do, because these are not, hey, I'll sit down over the weekend and, hammer these things out. I
Right.
try to be, to practice what I preach. I try to be a Berean, searching out the scriptures. I try to study to show myself approved to God. And that's the key. not approved to man,
Right. Absolutely.
to one side or the other, but approved to God. That's the best thing that I could, hope to do as a servant of God. So I'll be looking into a lot of different topics. My channel and my focus are obviously a little bit different than most others. I typically don't necessarily address, week to week happenings, although I try to follow them. And I appreciate Robbie and others who have done, videos on those things, because those, if you really pay attention, you can learn a lot about
Right.
the powers that be, and the people who have had to, as Robbie said, the people who have had to recant, right? Because the pressure is on. And of course, everybody who sounds so serious before all of a sudden says, no, I was just joking, or no, I was just trolling, because they see their whole career, they see their fan base,
Jeopardized,
at risk. And that's the beautiful thing about my situation was I had no fan base,
yeah.
I had no fan base. I was, I was a guy that nobody knew. I'm in a small community, in an average, church setting. And I got fired completely, completely removed in an instant. So there was no pressure on me to conform to anything. And so I really see that actually as a blessing for, for
Huge.
my ministry.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you a couple things that I've been looking into lately is there was this world empire named Tartaria just recently going up to from the 16th century to the 1800s that even had colonized America and established as part of it this huge world empire, and they had this high technology. And then sometime in the 1800s there was this thing called a mud flood that ended up wiping out a huge population of the world and buried, over huge tracts of land, much of what was this particular world empire. And this is something that the CIA in a document, they wanted to expunge all knowledge of this particular empire and also of this particular event that happened and the reasons for even the War of 1812. So there's a lot of things that occurred in our past, even the history of like Atlantis and the people, or whoever it was that created a lot of these megalithic structures worldwide. A lot of that knowledge has been lost to us, and a lot of what we believed, even like with what the Bible makes mention of with the giants and the presence of the giants worldwide, all of that history and knowledge has been expunged as well. And so there's so many deceptions and so much that is now coming to light that we are all being forced to reconsider to get a better understanding of what really happened in our past and how it is that we got to here. And so, I mean, gosh, every time it just seems like more and more there's, just more and more rabbit holes to go down. But I wanted to ask you, Robbie, I saw something recently on your channel which was talking about the attacks, the kind of anger that is being pushed upon Christians worldwide. And I also wanted to ask both of you guys what you think about as far as truth being taught in the churches, and whether you think that people are being called out of the churches because truth and even things such as paganism and idolatry are being fomented within them. So can you talk about that documentary and
Sure.
then, yeah,
Yeah, the reactions. I think that when you're looking at is Hated for Christ's Sake documentary that I had put out, I think about 4 months ago, and it was just showing a lot of basically the world coming against kind of the gospel and the Bible. But for this topic itself, I mean, I know with Pastor Nate and myself, we both can testify of the real cost of believing this or even
Mhm.
entertaining looking into, true biblical cosmology, because, as Pastor Nate was fired from his job, I have been kicked out of 2 churches. My family and I, we've gone through a real painful journey of going through this. And the sad part about it is that the elders or the church leaders or the pastors won't even bring up scripture anymore. They're just bringing up NASA and science. So, we've got to a point now where they're not even trying to make up stuff in the Bible saying, hey, here's the reason why, biblically speaking, we've got to let you go, or you've got to move on. They're actually just quoting, NASA and science. So it's a very scary situation, especially when it comes to the church, where we've moved to a point where they'll act to that degree, especially with families that have been going to church for years and years. I know personally of a family of like 7 that the entire family were asked to leave their church, and they had been going there for years and years. It was their home church, and they weren't really talking about this topic. They were just posting stuff on social media. It was actually social media that got them in
Wow.
trouble. And I know with Pastor Nate, I mean, he can talk a little bit more about it, but I mean, just going and attending a conference where they're talking about it got him in hot water. And myself personally, while the first church really didn't know about my channel, then it came to their, radar, and we had our discussions, and they told me that I would be given an ultimatum at some point. It wasn't at that point. It was just, in the future, you're going to be given an ultimatum. I'm like, oh, what's that? It's either, give up your channel or this church. So you have to pick or choose. It's either your channel or the church. And
Mhm.
then with the second church, I laid everything out, my channel, my documentaries. I had them like look at everything. I didn't hide a thing. It was just right on the table. Everything was fine. Nor they didn't really agree with it, but it really wasn't that important, as I will make sure that anyone knows that I do not hold that biblical cosmology is salvational from a Christian standpoint. If you already are serving Christ, you are born again. This topic isn't salvational. It is important, but again, it doesn't determine someone's salvation.
Right.
Well, they agreed with that. Everything was fine, and yet, 6, 7 months down the road, we were asked to leave. So this topic, while people can at one breath say something, it leads to some crazy reactions, to the point where, like, I've been asked to leave 2 churches, and there's been pastors that have lost their jobs. People are losing their jobs over this topic. And I would believe that because this has been held down for so long, and it's been something that really no one looked into, and that's a whole other, I guess, topic for another night. But I look at this as, this is supernatural. I woke up for a very specific reason. I was woken up. Everyone on this call has been woken up. That's why we're not able to take the high ground, or be able to look down on people like we're better or we know more than other people. We have to look at it as a responsibility, and it's something that God's called us to lead and to give this truth out, but also not to puff up in pride, saying, duh, how come you can't see this? Because 5 years ago, I didn't see this myself. And I would have been just as lost if I was calling other people lost that don't understand, what the Bible says truly when it comes to creation. But it is a slippery slope. The minute you start disregarding the Bible and saying, well, that's allegory, or that's poetry, or really, oh, maybe that's an error in the Bible. Once that happens, it's a slippery slope. And then what can you trust in the Bible? So for me,
Mhm.
hanging on to the Word of God and saying that everything here is literally true, especially when it comes to creation, is so important. Because myself, I, laughed and ridiculed the Bible when I was, younger. And the number one reason I did is because science had already showed me the truth, that the Bible was just nothing but a book of fairy tales and
Right.
prehistoric, sheep herders that really were not really intelligent, that didn't understand the world or the universe. But the reality is the opposite, that God understands his creation and knows specifically. And it's been Satan that has been waging war, getting people to believe in science fiction and fairy tales like we're on a spinning ball flying through space.
Yeah, and the other thing is that Satan knows that if he could create doubt in any portion of the belief in the Bible, and especially with cosmology, that doubt could be expanded to all other realms of what the Bible may cover as truth. And so he's ingeniously utilized and fabricated this whole cosmological deception in order to do that exact thing. And now he's got it established that it is taught in our schools that we evolved of monkeys, that the whole grand design of creation randomly and of chance and chaos just came about to be and to create what it is now, and that there's no God or intelligent design um, taking or playing any part within that whole scheme of it just randomly evolving to become what it is now, even though the looking at and examine that is just ludicrous, but yet that's what is believed, and so many people that are raised in these educational systems now, they fully believe that. And all the scientists, most of them, that get their PhD degrees, they're atheistic in nature because of the prevalence of this belief and the way that the educational systems and scientism separate people from belief in the word, but also from relationship with the Most High God. And and especially for those kind of people, it's absolutely salvational. Nate, Pastor Nate.
Yeah, in my situation, one thing that I identified with the church that fired me is that, there were a couple things in play. There was a power play, which was, we got to control the information, we got to control, the teaching. But there was also, a failure of nerve within the leadership to check things such as gossip, and to check, the power of the congregation. One of the things, unfortunately, that a lot of churches run into in the church leaderships is when they're evaluating a conflict or a potential problem, sometimes what supersedes the spiritual aspects that need to be addressed is a financial, end. You have people that when they get upset will often threaten their leaders, if this decision goes this way, I'm not putting my offering in the plate, So I think there was some emotional, aspects there. They got caught up in emotion. This was a congregation that had been declining somewhat in the last few years, enough that they said, hey, we got to circle the wagons. And so I know that when some people, made some noise, they probably were also concerned about the financial end. And there's a book I'd like to recommend to the listeners. It's not a very thick book. It's a fascinating book. It actually was written by Edwin H. Friedman. And Friedman wrote this book called A Failure of Nerve. And the subheading is Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix. But A Failure of Nerve, it goes into talking about how every, organization, a family is an organization that has leadership and it has, dynamics and emotions. A church is a family, a business is an organization that has, leadership and emotions. And he shows how that the big problem today with most leaderships is that they will be reactionary to, emotion or immature people. And it'll cause a chain reaction when those leaders aren't willing to take a stand and to evaluate things and say, hold on a second, let's talk this out. Let's look at this. And I think that that's going to be, needed in the churches to navigate subjects like the biblical creation, flat earth, and other related subjects, because so much of it has become reactionary. And I think that leaders need to be aware of the topic, and they need to anticipate that these topics are going to be, hitting their congregations. There's going to be at least a handful of people there that are affected by these things. And so, my job and other people's job, hopefully, is also to highlight that to church leaderships and say, what's better for the church, for the body? Is it better to be proactive, or is it better to be reactive? And I think most people can cognitively understand that reactive is usually not a good thing. And that's what happened in my situation. I think certainly what happened in Robbie's situation.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is how can you stand with truth if you don't know what truth is? Robbie,
Exactly.
final comment. We got just a
Yeah,
minute
absolutely.
remaining.
And that's the whole thing. And that's what the show is going to be about, that I'm starting, is celebrate truth. And again, when we're exposing the world's lies, it can be dark and it can get you down. But when you understand that there is a truth, that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's where we have joy. That's where we have freedom. And the truth will set you free.
Amen.
Amen, brother. Hey, I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you too, Zen.
We'll
Take care,
talk
Pastor
soon.
Nate.
Be
care.
blessed, everyone.
See everyone.
Good night. Shalom.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.